Yo, what's good? If you're wondering whether love can hit you when the world says your time's up, or if choosing joy might cost you everything but your pride, this story's for you. We're diving into a raw, real tale of two people who found love against the odds, kept it quiet, and paid a price. Buckle up, it's messy, beautiful, and unforgettable. It was a chilly Tuesday morning in late October, Portland, Maine, at the community center's weekly grief and growth group. Grace Delaney, 64, sat quietly, sipping weak coffee, listening more than talking. She'd been coming since June, after losing her husband 5 years earlier to a heart attack that left no warning, just silence. Then she noticed Walter Briggs, mid-60s, kind eyes, hands trembling slightly as he fumbled with a creamer packet. He sighed, gave up, and drank his coffee black. Something about that small surrender caught her. After the meeting, she tapped his shoulder. They make those things impossible on purpose. He looked up, startled, then smiled. Part of the test, right? She grinned back. You failed with dignity. That was the spark. The next week, he sat beside her. The week after, they hit a diner 2 blocks down for pancakes and bacon. It became their ritual. Tuesday group, breakfast, then slow walks through the neighborhood park, leaves crunching underfoot. They didn't dwell on their losses. Walter's wife, Margaret, died of cancer 3 years back. Grace's husband, Tom, passed in his sleep. Instead, they swapped stories about crossword puzzles, jazz records, Grace's days teaching high school English, Walter's years designing bridges. It was easy, like slipping into a favorite sweater. Walter wore the same worn flannel every week, boots scuffed but honest. Grace skipped makeup, her gray hair loose. They didn't need to perform, they were enough. By November, Walter suggested a trip to a waterfront bookstore. Unless you've got somewhere better to be, he teased. She didn't. They wandered, him grabbing a beat-up copy of Hemingway's A Movable Feast, her picking a Mary Oliver poetry collection. Outside, on a bench by the river, he read aloud, voice steady, low, the words carrying weight. Grace closed her eyes, the world fading to just his voice and the water's murmur. It wasn't love yet, but it was close. Come December, at a Christmas market, Grace paused at a booth selling hand-carved ornaments. Walter picked up one shaped like a cardinal. Birds that come back, he said softly. She asked if he believed it. I don't know, but I like the idea something returns. Halfway through the parking lot, he stopped, breath visible in the cold. Tuesdays aren't just another day anymore. Grace looked at the frozen pavement, then at him. Me too. He hesitated. Is it crazy to want more than Tuesdays? She smiled, heart racing. What's wrong with a little crazy? From then on, it wasn't just Tuesdays. It was Fridays at the farmer's market, picking out apples and laughing over misshapen carrots. Sundays for coffee after church, sharing a single scone. Movie nights with rented DVDs and a bowl of popcorn between them. No grand gestures, no need for them. They were each other's first call in the morning, last before bed. They kissed once, softly, on New Year's Eve, while the world clinked champagne glasses. No one saw, but it felt like a quiet miracle. They were careful, though. Grace hadn't told her daughter, Melissa, 38, a married mom with a daughter, Lily, 11. Walter hadn't told his son, Paul, 40, a single engineer. They weren't ashamed, but they knew how people talk, how adult kids sometimes see parents as obligations, not people with beating hearts. So, they kept their joy folded away, private, like a letter in a drawer. In January, Walter brought Grace a carton of homemade soup, carrot and ginger, slightly oversalted. With it, a folded napkin held a note, "Let's not grow old alone." Grace held it, heart pounding, then took his hand. No words, just warmth. Walter never thought he'd love again. He'd loved Margaret for 40 years, steady, not flashy, like the ticking of their grandfather clock. They met in college, she studied art education, he studied civil engineering. She teased he needed to relax, he said she'd break him if she got serious. They married after graduation, raised Paul, argued about wallpaper, took biennial trips to Maine lighthouses. Then cancer came. Margaret was healthy, brisk walks, homemade meals, no smoking, but it didn't care. 2 years of treatments, hospital drives, chemo schedules. Walter memorized her meds, held her hair when it fell out, read aloud when she couldn't speak. Near the end, she whispered, "Promise me you'll try again, to live, to love." He cried, said there'd be no one else. She smiled. "You don't know that." After she passed, Walter kept their house unchanged. Her sweaters hung in the closet, her mug sat by the sink. Paul pushed him to move on, sell the place. Walter ignored him until he found Margaret's journal, tucked in her bedside drawer. The last page read, "Walter is good and kind but forgets to live for himself. If I leave first, I hope someone reminds him how." That's why he joined the grief group, not for healing, but for a promise. Grace, too, had a past. Tom was her high school sweetheart, a quiet man who loved crosswords and gardening. They built a life of gentle routines, Sunday dinners, evening walks. His death was sudden, no goodbye, just an empty bed. Grace grieved privately, tending her garden, teaching until retirement. She joined the group because silence grew too heavy. By February, their kids noticed. Grace let it slip to Melissa over the phone, between talk of flu shots and taxes. "I've been seeing someone." A pause. "What do you mean, seeing someone?" Melissa's voice rose. Grace chuckled. "His name's Walter. We met at the grief group." Another pause. "Like dating?" "I suppose." Melissa's tone cooled. "Be careful. People take advantage, even at your age." Grace's smile faded. "I've grieved, Melissa. Now I'd like to live." Across town, Walter told Paul over coffee. "I'm seeing someone. Grace. She's lovely." Paul blinked. "Romantically?" Walter nodded. Paul leaned back. "She after your pension? The house?" Walter's jaw tightened. "She's a retired teacher, has her own income." Paul muttered. "So she's strategic." Walter stood. "She makes me feel human again." Paul sighed. "I don't want to untangle a mess when you're gone." Walter laughed bitterly. "When I'm gone, you're not exactly 30 anymore." Their kids' skepticism didn't stop them. It made them closer. Tuesdays moved to Walter's house. Grace brought cinnamon rolls, he played Ella Fitzgerald on vinyl. He read her poetry by the fireplace, she left her glasses on his nightstand. One evening, watching snow fall, Walter turned to her. "What would you say if I asked you to marry me?" She smiled. "I'd say yes." He nodded. "Good, because I'm asking." She kissed his cheek. "Then we better make it count." A big wedding wasn't an option. Too many eyes, too many objections. They planned something small, secret. Walter's army buddy, Richard, could officiate. Grace's neighbor, Kelsey, offered to take photos. They chose March 4th, a Tuesday, their day. Grace told Melissa 2 days prior, in the church courtyard. "Walter and I are getting married." Quietly. Melissa stared at a fallen leaf. "I'm ashamed of you." Grace flinched. "You're rushing into this. It's embarrassing." Grace's voice steadied. "I know how he looks at me when I laugh, how he remembers Tom's death and says nothing. I'm not apologizing for being human." Melissa softened. "I don't want to lose you." Grace took her hand. "You won't." The wedding was in a clearing behind Walter's house, snow melting, moss peeking through. Grace wore a navy coat and a scarf Lily knitted. Walter wore pressed flannel. Richard, tearful, said, "The heart doesn't wait." Walter spoke. "You made me believe I hadn't run out of time." Grace replied, "You taught me love doesn't expire." They exchanged gold bands, hands shaking, and kissed softly. Kelsey's camera clicked. They sat on a log, sipping thermos coffee, rings glinting. That photo, 2 people, hands entwined, sunlight through bare trees, would later go viral. They drove 2 hours north to a cabin, no itinerary, just a fireplace and a lake view. They made grilled cheese, laughed over Scrabble, Grace won, and read poetry. Grace scribbled thoughts in a notepad. Walter spilled crumbs and didn't care. At night, she whispered, "Do you ever wonder if this is too good to last?" He squeezed her hand. "Every minute. Let's not waste them." But the world didn't wait. Back at the clearing, after the vows, a car crunched gravel. Paul appeared, coat flapping, face flushed. "You didn't." Walter stood firm. "We did." Paul shouted. "Behind our backs?" Grace said, "You turned yours first." Paul waved at her dismissively. Some widow with a sob story. Walter stepped forward, sharp. "Watch your mouth." A slip on wet moss, a rock, a sickening thud. Walter fell, head striking stone. Grace screamed, cradling him, blood seeping into her coat. His eyes unfocused. "Walter, stay with me." But he was gone. Paul staggered, mumbling, "I didn't push him." Police came. Paramedics pronounced Walter dead. No charges, just a report. Blunt force trauma, an accident. Grace stayed at Walter's house 2 days, moving through rooms, clutching his pillow. She watched their wedding video, his voice, their rings, his words. "You were my second beginning." Melissa found her on the kitchen floor, holding a mug. "It wasn't supposed to end this soon." Melissa flinched. "I know." Grace shook her head. "You thought it shouldn't have started." The photos surfaced online via Kelsey's Instagram. They just wanted to be happy. It spread with hashtags, #LoveAtAnyAge, #JusticeForGrace. Letters poured in from strangers. "You gave me hope." Paul faced scrutiny. His business, his blog, raked over. He issued a statement, "A tragedy, we ask for privacy." No one bought it. Grace, at Walter's urn, was asked by a journalist, "Do you regret it?" She said, "No, only that it didn't last longer." By May, Grace moved to a cottage by the river, returning weekly to their bench, pouring 2 coffees, one untouched. She carried Walter's last letter. "You were my favorite beginning." She volunteered at the library, wrote essays, baked for the widows group. A reporter asked, "Tragic or beautiful?" She said, "Both." The tragedy was its brevity. The beauty was that it happened. One Tuesday, an older man sat on the bench, holding Mary Oliver. "My wife loved her," he said. Grace smiled. "Mine too." They sat in silence, sharing air, ache, hope. He tipped his cap. "See you around, poet." She nodded. "Until then." She sipped her coffee, closed her eyes, the bench creaking as if someone else sat down. Years later, Lily found Grace's notebook, a line in her handwriting. "Don't be afraid to love loudly, even if the world tells you to whisper." Were Grace and Walter wrong, or the only ones brave enough? Drop your thoughts below, and if this hit you, smash that like button and subscribe. Let's keep their story alive.